I created a fake profile to see if my fiancée would cheat. She matched with me instantly and trash-talked her boring, broke boyfriend. I arranged a date. When she arrived dolled up, she found me and her parents waiting at the table. I 29 male work 50 hours a week managing databases for a logistics firm. My job pays well, but it demands strict attention to detail and recognizing patterns. That exact same attention to detail is what ended up destroying my relationship. Fiancée and I had been together for 4 years and engaged for 8 months. We lived in a 3-bedroom condo I bought solely in my name before we even met. I paid the mortgage, the utilities, the property taxes, and the HOA fees. She worked in digital marketing, earning a decent salary, but almost all her money went toward her car lease, designer clothes, and expensive dinners with her friends. Her contribution to our household was supposed to be groceries, which usually just meant buying artisan cheeses and imported wine she liked while I lived off basic meal prep. The shift in her behavior started about 3 months ago. She became hypercritical of my daily routine. She told me I was stagnant. She complained that we did not travel enough, completely ignoring the fact that I was aggressively saving to pay for the massive wedding she demanded. Then came the classic red flags. She changed her phone passcode. She started placing her phone face down on tables. She suddenly had late-night marketing strategy sessions that required her to be out until midnight on Thursdays. When I asked her about the sudden changes, she turned it right around on me. She called me insecure and controlling. She said my lack of ambition was making her question if we were on the same wavelength. I am a logical person. When the data does not make sense, you run a test. I knew she was superficial about appearances and wealth. So I created a fake profile on a high-end dating app. I used a burner number. I set up the profile as a 34-year-old venture capitalist who split his time between our city and Europe. I used photos of a moderately attractive, well-dressed guy I found on an obscure European real estate website. I made sure the background of photos featured luxury cars and high-end hotel lobbies. I set the location parameters to a 1-mile radius of her office. It took exactly 3 days. I was swiping through the app during my lunch break, and there she was. Her profile was active. Her bio read, "Looking for someone who actually knows how to treat a woman. No homebodies." I swiped right. The app immediately notified me of a match. She had already liked the fake profile. She sent the first message within 10 minutes. She told me I looked like I actually knew how to dress, which she claimed was rare. I typed back, playing the part of an arrogant, wealthy guy, saying I found most people settle for mediocrity. Her response was jarring. She said she was currently dealing with someone who defined mediocrity and that it was exhausting. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, and asked her to elaborate. She replied that her roommate/boyfriend was boring, broke, and refused to live life. She told me they were basically just roommates at this point, but she was staying because the rent was cheap while she figured out her next move. She even called me totally oblivious. Broke. I paid for the roof over her head. I paid for the ring on her finger. I was funding the wedding she was actively planning with her mother. I did not confront her that night. I played the role of the boring boyfriend. We ate dinner in silence. She texted on her phone the entire time, smiling at the screen, while my burner phone buzzed quietly in my pocket. Over the next 2 days, I escalated the conversation on the app. I told her I was flying to town for the weekend and wanted to take her to the most exclusive steakhouse in the city. I told her to dress up. She eagerly agreed. She even sent me a photo of the dress she planned to wear. It was a black silk dress I bought for her birthday last year. I needed witnesses. I knew her capacity for manipulation. If I just dumped her, she would spin a narrative to our mutual friends and her family, claiming I was abusive or crazy. I needed undeniable proof, delivered in a way she could not twist. I called father and mother. They lived about an hour away. I told them I was planning a surprise pre-wedding celebration dinner and needed them there early to help me set up. Thursday evening arrived. Fiancée told me she was going to a networking mixer for women in tech. She spent 2 hours getting ready. When she walked into the living room, she was wearing the black silk dress and the diamond earrings I gave her for our anniversary. She looked at me sitting on the couch in my sweatpants, sighed, and told me not to wait up because I looked tired. As soon as she left, I put on a tailored suit, grabbed the envelope containing the printed screenshots of our dating app conversation, and drove to the steakhouse. I had reserved a large booth in the back. Father and Mother arrived 15 minutes later, smiling and looking around for balloons or a cake. I told them she would be there soon, but before she arrived, they needed to look at something. I placed the envelope on the table. Father opened it. The top page was her dating profile. The subsequent pages were our chat logs, explicitly detailing her plans to use me for free housing while seeking a wealthier man. Father turned red. Mother put her hand over her mouth. Father demanded to know what it was. I explained that she thought she was meeting the man she had been messaging, completely unaware it was me. Mother immediately tried to run interference, saying it must be a hack and that I could not ambush her like this. I told her to read the messages and look at the photo of the dress. Before Mother could argue further, the hostess walked toward our table, followed by Fiancée. Fiancée was scanning the room, looking for the European guy from photos. She did not look at the people in the booth until the hostess stopped and pointed. Her eyes locked onto mine. The smile vanished. Then she saw Father. Then she saw Mother. The blood drained from her face. I gestured to the empty chair across from me and told her to have a seat. She froze, looking frantically around the restaurant. Then back at us. She asked what I was doing there. Father threw the stack of papers onto the center of the table and ordered her to sit down. She slowly slid into the booth and looked at the papers. She recognized the app interface immediately. She looked up at me, confused, and asked where the venture capitalist was. I slid the chat logs toward her and told her she was looking at him. I told her she had found her next move, and her next move was out of my condo. Mother started crying, asking how she could do this when the wedding invitations went out yesterday. Fiancée's shock rapidly morphed into defensive anger. This was her extreme entitlement kicking in. Instead of apologizing, she went on the offensive. She hissed that I trapped her, spied on her, and created a fake profile just to manipulate her. She called me a psychopath. I stated flatly that she matched with me, called me broke, and admitted to using me for cheap rent. There was no trap. I just opened a door and she sprinted right through it. She grabbed her purse, stood up, and said she was not doing this and that we were done. Father sharply told her to leave the ring. She clutched her left hand, said it was a gift, and marched out of the restaurant. I paid the bill and went home, expecting to find her packing. I was wrong. When I unlocked the condo, she was sitting on the couch watching television. She had not packed a single box. I told her to leave. She did not even look away from the screen. She smugly informed me that she had consulted a legal forum on her way home. She had established residency. I could not legally evict her without a formal 30-day notice, and if I tried to force her out or change the locks, she would call the police and report me for an illegal self-help eviction under the laws of our state. Because she received mail there and had lived there for over a year, she was a month-to-month tenant. Even without a formal lease agreement, I told her I would serve the notice tomorrow and to sleep in the guest room. The next morning, I hired a local real estate attorney. He drafted a formal 30-day notice to quit. I paid a process server to hand it to her directly at her office. That afternoon, the dirty tricks began. I was at work when my neighbor called, saying the police were at my condo. I drove home immediately. 2 officers were standing outside my door. The older officer told me to step back. He explained that my fiancée filed for an ex parte temporary restraining order against me that morning. A judge signed it based on her sworn affidavit, claiming I threatened her with physical violence the night before and she feared for her life. I was legally required to vacate the premises immediately. I had 10 minutes to pack a bag. She was weaponizing the domestic violence legal system to secure exclusive possession of my property and bypass the eviction notice. The officer told me to save my text messages for the judge and that the hearing to make it permanent was in 14 days. I packed a suitcase, left, checked into a hotel, and called a lawyer. He told me this was a common tactic used by entitled tenants or ex-partners to get de facto possession of a residence. It was perjury, but judges signed them out of an abundance of caution. He told me not to contact her, and that we would crush her at the hearing. That weekend in the hotel, I remembered something. Fiancée had an old iPad she used for reading. She left it at my parents' house 2 months ago during a barbecue, and it was still sitting in my mother's spare bedroom. I drove there and retrieved it. I charged it and turned it on. It was still logged into her Apple ID, syncing her iMessages. I opened the Messages app to see if she had bragged to her friends about the fake restraining order. What I found was infinitely worse. She had a deeply active text thread with a contact saved as marketing vendor. It wasn't a vendor. It was co-worker, a married senior director at her firm. The messages went back 6 months. Explicit photos. Hotel room reservations paid for with cash. But the worst part was the financial planning. She had sent him a message saying she was transferring another $1,000 to his Venmo that day and asking if the startup account was ready. He replied that once they hit $20,000, they could sign the lease for their new agency space, and asked how much longer she could keep milking the roommate. She replied that she would wait until the wedding deposits were due, drain the joint savings a week before, and tell me she was calling it off, claiming I was too passive to fight her on it. The dating app wasn't her looking for a new man. It was her looking for a wealthy Mark to bridge the financial gap, because co-worker was cash poor due to his own marriage. She was systematically funneling money out of our joint account to fund a business venture with her married affair partner. Because I trusted her entirely with the wedding planning, I had ignored the joint account recently and paid my main bills from my personal account. I logged into my bank portal and checked the transaction history. Over the last 4 months, there were dozens of small, obscure transfers to a third-party payment app, totaling exactly $14,500. I sent the entire export of the iPad messages to lawyer. He told me we did not just have a defense of the TRO now. We had civil fraud, conversion of assets, and absolute proof of perjury. The day of the temporary restraining order hearing arrived. Fiancée sat on the opposite side of the courtroom, wearing a modest cardigan and no makeup, trying to look small and terrified. Her legal aid attorney presented her affidavit, talking about how I allegedly cornered her, screamed in her face, and threatened her. The judge asked the lawyer if we wished to contest the permanent order. Lawyer stated we were contesting it vigorously. He explained we had conclusive evidence. She filed the order strictly as a real estate tactic to avoid a lawful eviction and was simultaneously stealing my assets. He handed the judge a bound dossier. It contained the restaurant timestamps, sworn affidavits from father and mother confirming my exact location and behavior that night, the dating app transcripts, an eviction notice served just hours before she filed the police report. Then lawyer directed the judge to tab 4, containing timestamped text messages synced from her iCloud account. He pointed out a message sent the morning she filed the TRO to a man who was not me. The judge read the highlighted text silently. Fiancée had texted co-worker that she was going to the courthouse to tell them I got violent. So they would force me out and she would get the condo to herself until they launched the agency. The judge slowly lowered the paper. The temperature in the room dropped. She glared at Fiancée and asked if that was her phone number. Fiancée stammered. Her attorney looked at the document, his eyes widening, and whispered furiously to her. The judge slammed her gavel, dismissed the case, and vacated the temporary order immediately. She told Fiancée she had sworn a false oath to manipulate the justice system and that she was referring the transcript to the district attorney's office for potential perjury charges. She added that if Fiancée was not out of property by the end of the 30-day notice period, the eviction judgment would be swift. Fiancée looked completely destroyed, but we weren't done. That afternoon, lawyer filed a civil suit for conversion of funds to recover the $14,500 she stole and a replevant action for the return of the engagement ring. Under our state law, an engagement ring is a conditional gift given in contemplation of marriage. If the marriage does not occur, regardless of fault, the donor is legally entitled to the ring's return. Then I took my own personal revenge without any lawyers. I found co-worker's wife on professional networking sites. I paid a courier to deliver a sealed envelope to her workplace containing every explicit text, every photo, and a complete financial blueprint her husband and my ex-fiancée drew up using my stolen money. The fallout was massive. Co-worker's wife filed for divorce immediately and locked him out of their house. She also sent the entire dossier to the HR department of the marketing firm where Fiancée and co-worker worked. Their company had a strict fraternization policy regarding management and subordinate employees. Both of them were terminated for cause by the end of the week. Without her job, Fiancée could not afford a lawyer to fight my civil suits. When the 30-day eviction notice expired, she did not leave. Lawyer filed the unlawful detainer. We went back to court. Without income and facing a mountain of evidence, she defaulted. The judge granted the eviction. On the day the sheriff deputies arrived to physically lock her out, she stood on the sidewalk with 4 garbage bags of her belongings. She had no job, no married boyfriend to fall back on, and an eviction on her permanent public record, making it nearly impossible for her to rent a decent apartment anywhere in the city. To settle the civil suit and avoid a massive judgment that would garnish her future wages indefinitely, mother and father stepped in. They were deeply ashamed of her actions. Father wrote me a check for the $14,500 she stole. In exchange, Fiancée handed over the engagement ring to my lawyer and had to sign an agreement to pay my legal fees incurred during the TRO defense. It has been 6 months. I sold the condo because it held too many bad memories. I used the equity, the returned wedding funds, and the money from selling the ring to buy a house in a quieter neighborhood. I focus on my career and my peace of mind now.